We Need to Go Home. Jonah comes with some gravitas features, as well as writer, producer, director Ben Vanderkleek and writer Trevor Vanderlei. Check out their IMDb pages for the full listens of their work. And it centers around a mother named Margot, played by Elena Huffman, who has a son named Jonah, in a movie called Jonah. Slow down, movie. Let us catch our breath. Don't throw a fact so goddamn shocking that our system will simply shut down because we won't be able to handle such a mind-blowing fact. Holy shit! So Jonah is played by Lincoln Huffman. I just wanted to have a little bit of fun there. No relation, of course, or possibly a relation. Check out IMDb and find out the relation. Relations all over. Okay, so yeah, this movie, Jonah, involves a son named Jonah who got kidnapped by aliens, according to Margot. Jonah's been acting weird. He was a bright, fun boy for the first couple minutes, then he got abducted, and now Margot realizes that nobody believes her. She thinks that everybody is out to get her, that nobody will ever believe what she has to say. She wants to get the story out there, kinda, but only the facts of the story that she wants, not the whole story. Because once you find out the whole story, oh boy, you're never going to want to talk to Margot again. But nevertheless, basically Margot ends up contacting somebody named Jen, who contacts somebody named Ozzy! Praise Bulldogs forever! Played by Osric Chow, who is a journalist that has his own issues that come to light when he decides to take on this alien abduction story. He has certain ties to something like this. Maybe he actually may believe it, but he may think that Margot's hiding something. Is she? Is she not? You have to wait to find out. So he also has his friend named Darren, played by Ken Kirby. And from there, once they arrive, they actually talk to somebody else named Henrik, who does brolistic medicine, as I like to call it, and talks about healing and all that. But we see how he does his interviewing, and then we find out a few factoids about how Ozzy acts. And then from there, we see them get to Margot's house. Margot is struggling financially, especially now that Jonah is not doing all that well. And actually starting to bother her, because Jonah keeps talking about wanting to go home. This is his home. Like he needs to go somewhere. He needs to go out there, somewhere out there. And then once Ozzy arrives, it becomes clear this isn't just a story about somebody that thinks that they were abducted by aliens. He thinks, oh, maybe there is a possibility there could be a little bit of meat to this story. What kind of meat? It's a chicken meat, because they're on a place that has a whole bunch of chickens and a whole bunch of, just roosters that cock at the, morning dawn. And they drink and they share facts and everything. And eventually we find out where this very obvious story is going. Look, it's low budget and the idea is there. I mean, we've done alien abduction stories almost to death. And there are some that sort of work. Like No One Will Save You sort of worked. And yeah, the low budget means they can't really show all that much and they have to use the reveals sparingly. The problem is the setup, while halfway decent, can't have a decent enough payoff. Even when you get to something eventually at the end, there's some parts in the middle, especially in the third act, where you're like, oh boy, that's where we wanted to go. That's the fight we wanted to go with. We didn't want to do a retake. No, we didn't want to do that. Okay. I mean, there's not much to spoil in this movie. It's really, quite frankly, simple. It's not awful. I look forward to seeing what else the filmmakers can do. And the cast certainly tries. There's crumbs of, halfway decent story elements that they could use. Just the problem is nothing is fully fleshed out, and also the budgetary constraints. But just really, in general, it's very dull. For any good that there is, unfortunately, there's a lot of boring. And that's pretty much all I have to say. It's on Amazon if you want to check it out. On Amazon Prime. So if you have an account, you can get movies like this. Again, not the worst thing I've seen, but just rather dull. That being said, 3, 2, 1, and spoilers. So, it turns out that Ozzy actually has some ties to this whole thing, because this is going to unearth some memories that he has hidden for a while. He was possibly abducted by aliens or contacted by aliens when he was a kid. Told people at school, they referred to him as Alien Boy. And also, he's on medication. On medication for whatever reason. Maybe because he's an addict. He is referred to as a junkie a few times. Maybe he's just having these nightmares and these things help him sleep or help him stay awake or help him go totally goddamn bonkers. Darren is his friend, and then they decide to go, they take this idea to go to, or take this opportunity to go to Margot's house. And it's pretty obvious, by the way, that Margot is totally off. Margot talks about losing her ass in a restaurant business, signing a bad deal, her mom's recipe, and her likeness were taken and turned into a franchise. She got nothing. So now she's having to get loans from banks. Jonah isn't doing all that well. He's wheelchair bound, except when he's not, because there's something weird going on here. It's obvious that Margot is not necessarily a good person. She's talking about protecting Jonah, locking him in his room, that kind of stuff. Jonah refers to himself as a Centauri, an Alpha Centauri, as it were. And he wants to go home. And, yeah, more stuff gets unearthed. We find out, after some interviews, Jonah talks to Margot, and Margot basically wants to protect Jonah. Ozzy reveals that Oz is what his normal name is, but I'm just going to say Ozzy because it's just funny. That makes me think of Ozzy Osbourne, who had to have been abducted by aliens back in the 70s, because he hasn't made one lick of sense in about 40 years. Or almost 50 years. That being said, he reveals that his mother died around the time that he was Jonah's age. She had a brain aneurysm. Never really knew his father. And, like what he remembered about his father wasn't necessarily good. It's possible that he suffered abuse because he was adopted. Turns out Jonah was also adopted. They don't have the most cell service, but when they're able to contact on the house phone, Jen, who's their supervisor, whatever, basically says, yeah, by the way, Jonah was adopted. Strange. So, then, basically it's obvious that Margot is hiding something. Margot is trying to maybe keep Jonah hurt, like Munchausen syndrome. Like that movie Run, only this was done slightly better because it had better writing. And Ozzy talks to Jonah, offers him answers, says, I know about you, and I know you want to go home. So, yeah, then Ozzy and Darren get in a fight because Darren realizes, I want to go home. I want to get out of here. And Ozzy's like, we need to go get Jonah. And the dialogue exchanges are not great, and then they start getting him a fight. Ozzy gets choked out. And then he wakes up in the house, he's locked in, he busts a window and then cuts his leg very stupidly. This is where the third act really, really just rips anything out. Like they could have worked. Because, yeah, you do have to pay off things eventually, but yeah, paying it off this way was certainly a choice. So his leg is all cut up. Margot says, I took Jonah to the hospital. She obviously didn't. She hid him somewhere. She offers to help him. It's like, let's start over fresh. I know you care about him. All that. And then they get in a fight during one of the renovated parts of the house. And she had hidden Jonah away. He goes to take Jonah. And then she shoots him. Because why not? They're out in the field somewhere in Canada. And then she's fighting with him. He hits her in the head with a rock. And then Jonah is walking along, or crawling along. Maybe he really doesn't need a wheelchair. Maybe he's just faking it. Who the fuck knows? Who really cares? But he does them and then speaks a weird alien language. And there were these earlier drawings of these triangles. It was called The Way Home. And it's a ship that comes down. The ship admittedly looks kind of cool. I mean, you don't get to really see much of it. I mean, they put effort in there. But you gotta transcend humanity and touch the light. And he does. And then she says, goodbye, sweetheart. And that's it. Yep. Yeah, there you go. Jonah. Look, it's not awful. But it gets an F because it's just not very interesting. And I'm sorry, that third act just wasn't good. Check it out. Maybe you feel differently. But I don't know if I can recommend this. Nevertheless, I've seen a lot worse this year. Agree, disagree with what I said? Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Renthlan. I'll see you soon.